I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatches Art Livestream number 99. We're joined again by our illustrious moderator, Anna. Welcome back.
Long time no see.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. You were traveling the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was with some friends out in the woods and hiking, basically. The
Yeah.
last week, and not so much because I got sick, but
Sorry
yeah,
about that.
all good.
All right, well, let's run through some announcements here. But if it's your first time, then welcome. I'm Clint Curley. I'm an illustrator and an illustrator instructor. And Anna is part of the community, a moderator. She also is an illustrator and very active out on the Discord. And if you want to join us, that is where things are happening the most with the Swatches art community, is right here. I should have a link in the description under the video. There's 900 or so of us out there almost at all times. Somebody is out there streaming, chatting, sharing resources. You're out there a lot right now, aren't you, Anna?
Yeah, basically every day I'm there in the audio channel, and many people kind of, yeah, not to learn, but they accommodated to that, and there are many people now in the audio channel as well. So I'm really happy about that, and it's really active, and you can just get a lot from it. We talk about art, we share our painting processes while we are doing together croquis. I don't know whether you know what it is. This is like it is basically like posing figures, and we draw them, we draw gestures, we do studies together. We're just having fun with some games together. So it's a really active community at the moment, and I hope we can keep that up. And yeah, Discord there's a lot going on because we also have still the art club that is running. We have an art book club where we're reading books together that are about art. And yeah, there's really much to do, and we are really an active Discord.
Yeah, so if you are looking for an art community that is doing all kinds of different stuff, feel free to come by the Discord. I try to get in when I can. Time does limit me about how much I personally can be in there and be involved in the different stuff. But next week, next Friday, we will be having the Books and Binding Finals from Group 1. Today, we're going to be looking at the concepts from Group 2. Then next week, of course, following that stream, we'll be kicking off a new challenge. If you have not joined us for the Wednesday streams, they're at the same time on Wednesdays. That's 2 p.m. Central Standard Time for me. And those are just for members of the YouTube channels. That is for the Tier 2 members called Super Swatchers. You get to submit your artwork in, and we just do some paintovers for about 2 hours. And we have fun with it, and come out, hang with me in the Discord channel. We just chat while we're doing some paintovers. A lot of fun, a little casual. It's $5, so it's 4 extra live streams a month. And because I normally forget, please like, comment, and share the videos. Makes a big difference in the YouTube algorithm. So please remember to do that. And I had forgotten to open more the hour consultation dates, so I went ahead and did that this morning. If you are trying to schedule a one-on-one consult with me to talk about your art education, portfolio, etc., you can go out to art-mentor.com and schedule that, and I will chat with you on a one-on-one basis. Okay, I think that's it, unless anything comes to mind from you, Anna.
No, nothing like adding, but just a little hint that for people who are doing the Wednesday streams together with us, you can also join Clint in his audio here on Discord and ask all your questions, what you ever wanted to know. I mean, he's here. He's super reachable for you guys, and he will help you. And he's really, really good at explaining stuff and has a lot of experience to share. So really use these chances and join us on Discord.
Yes, if remember on the Wednesday paintovers, Feel free to submit the images that you may be working on for your art challenge entries. You're feel free to do that. And when you come hang out in the audio, then yeah, like Anna says, you got a question, just toss it to me. We'll chat about it. It's a very inexpensive way to get some questions answered and possibly get some paint overs done. They're all by lottery, so we just literally roll a die to see whose image gets repainted. And of course, if you are joining us live, then feel free to toss your questions or comments into the live chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it. Anna is also keeping an eye on it, and we will try to answer your questions during the course of the program. But let's jump into the entries. We have 7 entries to look at on this episode. We're going to start alphabetically with Lexi. So the challenge here, if you have not heard the outline or watched the previous episodes, is a MTG-themed challenge. It would be like a spell card, which would be an action card in the game. And in this case, was to depict a minotaur character that is being basically attacked and bound by these magical chains to try to make him immobile, right? You're immobilizing him with these magical chains. So we have several entries on that. They could choose between that or Carnivorous Library, and we'll take a look at some other illustrations of other artists who created concepts for those. And the artist is to do several concepts like we see up here, several different viewpoints and poses. They pick the best one. They do some value studies to figure out what the values and lightings will be. They pick the one that they like, and then they do some color studies of those. And of course, you also need to include major references such as poses, lighting, style, etc. And I do provide a template for everybody to follow, or you can change it up a little bit if you're using like a different program, which may be the case here. But you've had a chance to look at some of these. Did you want to toss out any initial impressions of this piece?
So I basically just, now you say it, I just have looked at the one on the top, not on the other versions he made.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I like about the others a little bit more than on the one he went for is the readability of the horns. They are more standing out. This is one thing that I was about to say in his other that he submitted. Because of the helmet, the structure of the helmet, you don't see immediately that this is a minotaur. The first thing that you see is the most important thing, and that is usually communicated a lot with the silhouette of the character, and you hide a lot with the helmet and also the shield and the legs that are overlapping, so we don't see much of the pose or what creature it is. When you look at the left of the references you got, they are all so clear silhouettes that you immediately see what kind of creature we are dealing with. They have huge horns that are standing out from the character. They are also value-wise much departed, or much, my English is bad, but they're definitely darker, for example, than the background values, so that you see what is part of the character and what is part of the mid and background. And I think this is something we need to push in this painting by Alexei. I like the general idea with also the chains having interesting shapes rather than just simple chains and all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's just some things that we could push still. Another thing that really immediately caught my eye is that if you see this as a magic card and you'd imagine this to be really small, magic cards aren't that big. There's a lot of space around the character that had been lost to us. So it is not used space. It is a lot of sky and a lot of smoke and ground that we don't actually see or need. So I don't know whether it is. You could do this with cropping, you could do this with adding elements that are important to the character, you could choose a different pose that needs more space in the card. So there are many different ways to adjust that. and it depends how much work you want to put in that, and what you like and what you want to go for, what was important to you to keep in this piece. This is your decision then, but maybe Clint also can come up with some good ideas for you. So these are the very, very first things that I thought. I would have some little stuff more, but I think from here it's better to go to Clint and see what he considers important. So Clint.
I think we have a lot of the same impressions here. I'm going to start with the composition, which you had mentioned that there was basically a lot of wasted space, filling in the background, sky, ground, that sort of thing. And that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. Now, what's going on with the character and the chains themselves? I think a lot of that center area with the character and the chains is going really well. We just want to make better use of the real estate of that canvas area. Particularly like what you mentioned, magic cards are little, and you've got to be able to fill as much of that as possible. And as an illustrator, if you're working on something that's designed to be printed at a small size, see, I've got a magic card over here. Yeah, so here's an actual physical magic card. That's not very big, so you've got to make use of as much space as possible in order to fill your subject with it. And I've got a couple of suggestions on how to do that, so we'll take a look at that. I do want to commend a couple of the decisions here. The magic chains having this kind of magic drifting quality to them, that they're squarish, that they almost have these hooked skull things on the end. I think that's really cool. I like that. I also like the Minotaur's armor. He has a breastplate, different kinds of chainmail. He's got a helmet. He's got like a mohawk helmet thing going on. I think there's a lot of excellent decisions going on there, and I feel like he's got a good amount of character. I am with you that we've got to work with the values, though. And if you go with a value scheme more like what you see on your reference images, like you pointed out, overall the characters are just a lot darker, and so that they stand out well. And we probably want to do that same sort of thing, or vice versa, where he's lit and the background is darker. Something like that, so that we don't have the really similar tones of, say, the shield against the shadowed, soldiers in the background. That's not working real well. What I'm going to challenge you, Lexi, to think about a little bit is in terms of what is being lit and what is in shadow. So you want to put lit things against shadowed things and shadowed things against lit things. And that way you always have a different pairing of light against dark. And right now we don't really have that. We have shadowed things or dark things against other shadowed dark things behind it. And that sort of messes with it. We also probably want to go darker with the background down here, because we have the light things, which is the chains, against other light things, which are the little bits of dust and smoke. So we've got to change up that value a little bit to make that work. Okay, now Anna, you are familiar with Bayard Wu, right? The guy that does the female orcs.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Who isn't? He's great.
That is one of the things that came to my mind on this image is we really want to punch up the movement of this character. He doesn't feel like he's straining. It doesn't feel like he's running forwards real hard. So these are some images of Bayard Wu. You can see the name there on your screen. And these are some of the female orc characters. And look at the physicality. Look at how much, for instance, this first one up here, how much lean this character has to that forward motion. And how much he pushes these to really get a lot of action and force out of the character's movement. So I'm going to suggest go out there and see if you can do some sketches over top of your Minotaur, to push it. Now, I've done a little push with it. I did some copying and pasting and moved some things around. So this is, I'm kind of getting more of this. Well, one thing, I tinted it just to get some darker tones in it. Move the head forward so that he's straining his neck out. And then tilt that chest to kind of go along with it. Move that front arm up so that the shield is more like he's sprinting with the arm out in front of him. Move the other arm up. So again, it's in that fuller flash running pose where the arm is out there behind him, making it look like he's, pushing faster. And then getting more of that running pose here too. Getting that one leg up higher, the other leg just leaving the ground behind him. And then actually pulling in a little closer to feel more of the frame. You see, if we do that, then we're making better use of the space because we're elongating the amount of area that he takes. And we're also putting the arms out of the silhouette of the body. And now every limb of the body, each leg and the head are all very clear from just the silhouette. And as it is right now, for instance, this other arm gets totally lost. Within that silhouette, that arm is lost, and then both of the legs sort of just blend together. And this arm, you could probably make out what's going on with that arm, but the rest of it just sort of bleeds together, just looking at that shape, right? And so if we can get a better reading silhouette, then that's going to read on the card a lot better. What do you think about that? Would you try to push that pose that direction? Do you think that would finish a lot of it? Or would you actually think maybe even zooming up? Do we need to see his feet in this regard? Or would we get closer to the character?
Yeah, that was I wondering whether just the upper body would be enough.
Yeah.
But I think you made a pose that has a very clear silhouette, so he could also run with that. I think he has both options.
Mm-hmm.
I would also look for maybe other horn designs that you have something that is more going sideways, so that you add that to the silhouette because they're still covered within the silhouette. Because if you get a commission and it's saying Minotaur, I think it's really important to them that it's really understandable it's a Minotaur. So I would add it to the silhouette. It's my personal thing. Maybe Clint says, no, it's good like that. It's my personal opinion to have the horns also being part of the silhouette. Yeah.
Yeah, if we can do that, I think that's a good call. The more that you can tell from just the silhouette is going to be better. So doing that, getting the horn so that maybe the horn is reaching out this way past the mohawk before it starts turning upwards. So you got something a little more like that. So at least if it's out here, then you can tell that shape a little better. And then that would just get lost. So something along that lines may read a little bit better from the thumbnail. And okay, so I had that. And oh, this one was a little example. I've got to put this one on here. Norman LeMay. I came across this a while back and saved it. This is just a good example of pushing poses, of clear line of action, and sometimes you almost want to exaggerate the poses. You can see the difference between the gray and the white versions of the poses. He's not kind of confident, he's super confident. He's not kind of over the character, he's looming over the character. And you see that with Bayard's characters as well. They're not sort of jogging, they're outright sprinting through the middle of the air in action. So that's what we want to look for and try to get more of that sensation from the character there. And like I said, I would probably go with a shadowed foreground so that those chains can show up better. And that may mean that essentially the lower part of his body just becomes far more silhouetted. and just becomes darker. And that's fine. That can happen. We just want to get those chains to really pop out.
Yeah, two more things. The one thing on the what you just pulled up, this comic with the push it.
Mm-hmm.
You might think as an artist who's going for realism. That's what my mistake was like thinking, oh yeah, it's for comic and you over exaggerate stuff like that. But actually you need it also for realistic painting,
Yes.
and I think Bayard Wood shows this really well. I think there is no female on this planet that can turn her body against her hip like that, but it's still part of realism. It's his way of realism, and it's just much more intense and
Yes.
dynamic. And you need to, as an artist, you're allowed to do that, and even for realistic art. And I think that's a really, really important point that you should not miss.
Yeah, I mean, they're hiring us to do exaggerated reality. They're not just looking for real, they're looking for a heightened realism. More action, more powerful, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And the second thing for the lighting that I also had as a note, he has a very nice reference. If you pull back the Bayard rule layer, on the bottom, he has a very nice reference with a minotaur that has this typical light against dark and dark against light. Like the top of his body is lighter than the background, but the lower part is darker than the background. This kind of dynamic would fit very well, I think, for your character too, if you want to use that.
Yep.
I think that makes things very interesting to look at.
This image of Chris Vaughn's, also a magic artist, this is a book cover that he did. I was always fond of this image, and something like this could work. And it actually has some similarities to that lighting in that it's got more of the light on the top, direct light on the just head and shoulders, and then it fades off into shadow, and the background as well is fading down. But you notice that the background always remains lighter in tone. It's sitting more in the mid-tones where the character is allowed to use full range of light to dark. I would probably push this so that it was more in those tones, not so much just the clear, bright blue sky, but you might shift it to being a little more muted, a little more musty colors or dusty, so that the colors of the foreground elements are actually a little more exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I also had as a note for the colors that it is a struggle. He's fighting, but the background has very peaceful, impressionistic colors that are opposing that. And if it's not part of the storytelling in your painting, then I would rather go for colors and also a weather that shows more the struggle and pain that he endured.
Yeah, this is almost too positive, too lighthearted for something that is supposed to be about battle and struggle and stuff. But that said, all the framework is here. Excellent character design. We're just manipulating where some of the limbs are. I'm liking some of the expression going on in the face. The design of the different armor bits and everything, that's all looking good. I think the silhouette of the background is also, the silhouette of the battle back there can still work. We could put that in there. All right, we got to move on.
Yeah, in between the question from the chat, if you like, Clint.
Yeah, what you got?
Somebody wrote, it's some name I can't read. I study economics on a university, but I want to create my own concepts, not necessarily make it my job, but hit a professional level while going my studies. Are 2 to 3 hours of practice per day enough?
Well, it depends how fast you want to get to your goal.
Oh, I think it's the artist of the painting that we just critiqued.
I want to create my own concepts, not necessarily to make it my job, but hit professional level while doing my studies. Well, I mean, ultimately, it's just how many hours can you put into it? You can do 2 or 3 hours a day, unless you're talking about you only have 2-3 hours per concept. I see. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of open-ended. It's like, well, if you need to put in 1,000 hours, is 2 or 3 hours a day enough? Well, yeah, it might just take longer than somebody putting in, 4 or 5 hours. But I think 2 or 3 hours as a day is a great amount of time, especially if it's dedicated study. Any more than that, you're likely to start burning out if you're also having to do a lot of other studies and just life stuff going on. So 2 or 3 dedicated hours at during the day while you're also studying economics sounds really good to me. Just make sure that you've got some good goals that you're aiming at, and you're not just kind of, okay, I'll sit down and just doodle something. It'd be best if you're trying to follow a path. Like if you have an art challenge, you know exactly what you're going to do before you get there. It makes better use of your time.
Yeah.
All right, this one is by J. Kevin. Said, when I started this, I only thought about the pose. I had a hard time visualizing a proper background and struggled during the value studies. Any tips on this? Also, I had difficulty finding a proper pose anatomy reference. Kind of weird pose. Yes, it is. That's why you normally have to take your own pose photos for a lot of this stuff. Essentially, this is pretty much on the level I'm at right now. I've plateaued for a long time, kind of lost on what and how to improve. All right, well, we'll chat about it. The gist of this, I think, is working. I like the pose. You're pushing that sort of foreshortened, really perspectivized thing. I think that's fine. Magic does that quite a bit themselves. You struggled during the value phase. Looking at your value studies up here. Okay, so you come with the value study with the idea that there's the opening behind him. Okay. Well, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is, one, having that readable silhouette. And you mentioned that on the last one, Anna. Another thing is putting the light where you want people to look, because the light tells people what is important. You're either doing it to give importance or to clarify the shape of something, so that if you look at this reference that he has over here, the minotaur on the top right, the flaming axe, he's got light, for instance, down here on the ground. Now, is that because that's a focal point, that he put light there because he wants you to look there? No. He put it there so that that back leg and all that part of the anatomy there would show up, and so that that could be more visible. And then he's got light here. Why? Because that's important? No, because otherwise you would have a dark against a dark. And sometimes you just put light in places in order for things to show up. But down here, for instance, we've got light all down on this foreground section. And value-wise, there's not really a point to it. Because it's not clarifying anything. And it's not telling us any information or adding to the narrative. I would actually think about adjusting the composition so that he's going not facing downwards, but facing upwards, like he's trying to pull away from it. Right now, it's almost like he's trying to fall down. Did you get that sort of impression, or would you think about tilting it?
The last thing you said, it might make sense to me. I don't think it's a problem to. What you said is like he's moving towards the ground, right? Because he's like hunched over and he's not like struggling upwards. Is that what I understood correctly right now?
Yeah, I'll put on a version where I had him tilted the other way, and I was thinking that might be more successful. Oh, no, sorry. It just grabbed my whole window and moved.
Yeah, I'm a bit behind in stream, just as a reminder.
Will not let me do that.
I'll just wait until I see something.
Okay, close enough.
Mhm. Oh, okay. You would tilt it down. Now I see. I see. Yeah, I see what you mean. That's cool. I did not consider that, to be honest, because sometimes when you are like when you're fighting against somebody who's holding your shoulders or something, and sometimes you are even trying to fall down to the ground. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because it makes you more stronger than just fighting with your own muscle. And this is what I thought makes sense to me if he's like more moving towards the ground because it gives him more stability and
Could be,
um,
yeah.
but I also like the tilting idea. What you did there was also looking good. I also think that the value scheme is something that should be reconsidered for this painting. I really like the rendering. I like the pose, the readability, the usage of space, how the eye is led through the painting. This is all great. The 3D shapes. You think about 3D form in space and how the light hits specific parts and others not, and bounce light. You got the fundamentals, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
definitely not but a good base to start from there. I just think that the character itself and the background had completely the same values,
Mm-hmm.
which is a pity because you lose so much of the dynamism. Also, they have the same colors, so they are kind of melting into each other. And yeah, you either do it like Clint just did with like a lighter background, or you go back to the dark cave idea and have just the chains being a light source within that. Could also be. What I would add too is the chains are looking like they're wrapped over on top of his body, but they're not like really how to say, they're not really holding him tightly. You know,
Right.
usually your flesh would be pinched or something or pressed together. So this would add a lot, I think, if he's with really tight chains, like all the skin and muscles are like coming out of the sides of it, and maybe he's spitting, he's having a lot of saliva, and maybe blood or something, or scars over his face. Just show him he's so clean and so perfectly rendered. Give him something rough. Give him something that you see. Wow, that is a fighter. That guy is no one to mess with, you know. So you could add to that storytelling by giving such details, or one horn is broke, or I don't know, whatever. Just give him some story, and definitely up the contrast is another thing I add. And yeah, maybe a little bit material, like the ring on his nose could be a little bit more material. But this is nitpicky, and it's just a sketch, so you're not really even done yet. So just the directions where to go. These were the things that I was missing in this one, but I really like where it is right now already, and I'm really looking forward on what you're going to do with that one, because obviously you're a good artist.
Oh yeah,
And
there's great forms. The general rendering is excellent. Really getting a lot out of the pose. I'm
yeah,
just trying to kind of go along with what you're saying, which is can we punch up the colors and create a distinct like foreground background, and Ron does that really well. That's another image of Ron's over there that I pulled up, where like all of these foreground characters in this image are cooler because they're in shadow. Well, this shadow's cooler, and they're darker, and then the background is much warmer and lighter, and so they pop out really well. But it's only the really dark underside areas and the occlusion areas that are actually lost. Everything else it does have a certain amount of fill light on it. And I think something along that lines could really work over here, that we don't need necessarily as bright of a light on him. And then we can just use this sort of shadow tone down here. And we could even have like a little, well, it helps if I grab something lighter. You could have a little spill light from the chains on there. And same way that he has like the blue light on the eyes, if you want to just use like a red light on his eye to kind of create this blood fury sort of thing going on, you could do that as well. So that could give a nice overall feel to it. Some of the warm light kind of leaking over the back. Then we would want to add a little more color to some of his stuff, like the cloth and that sort of thing. You don't want to completely lose the color in the character. But yeah, getting that blue to pop. And I'm with you with the chains, maybe trying to make them feel like they're tighter against him. I think that's a good call. And I'm also curious just about where those are arranged. I was thinking about maybe changing those up a little bit. This one is this bottom chain, this loopy S one, I just don't feel like it meshes with the others. I want to create a pattern with the chains of them really latching on and creating this sort of thing going on, where they all are obviously holding him from a certain angle. And so, boom, you can feel how they all cross over the body to keep him from moving. And this one sort of breaks that. I would take that out. Unless you're going to have some like wrapping around his thigh, and then you see it going off like that way. Or then maybe you just see some in the background kind of coming towards him. That at some point they latch onto his ankles or something and go back. Yeah.
Also be cautious of tangents, like for example the right horn and the chain are building up a tangent. It is hard if you have so many elements there. Also the background, how it cuts into his shoulder is continued by the chain directly at the same. This is stuff that you just keep you just lose track of when you keep painting, and just revision that after you're finished with something. Do I have any tangents that are just distracting? Or the bad thing about tangents is that people keep looking at it instead of what they're supposed to look at. And that is why you try to avoid tangents in your work.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the other thoughts I had was about just the background design itself. You could even use a different pattern with the rocks. So if the rocks was sort of erupting out in this sort of pattern, it would go to follow the same directions and energy as the chains themselves. And so he's going through some sort of chasm where it's all V-shaped with these rocks. And you might even have a rock here in the foreground just to kind of use up some of that space. And then they could be coming out of those rocks. And all that angled shapes really help to add to the fury and energy of the scene. Rather than what you have was just kind of some ambiguous, rounded shapes that don't really follow any of the compositional patterns. If you wanted to do them as more of a target pattern where they're all these curvy kind of looped shapes, then that could help, tell it as well. But let's move it away from just kind of they're just general rocks that don't do anything, don't really follow any kind of pattern to help the composition in any meaningful way. Yeah. Okay, moving on from there, let's take a look at the next one, which is Jonathan. Says, I couldn't get beyond the composition stage. Situation at my daily boring job became ridiculously absorbing recently. Now I need to turn on the no sleep mode for finals. I've been there. I think I'm gonna go with the second composition for that, but we will see. I'm curious your opinion. Hope be able to present something decent at the end. We'll do what you can. Obviously, you have other life obligations, and you can do what you can with the time that you've got, and then later, if you need to finish it, you can absolutely do that. So looking at this one, I think the 3D mock-up gives you a lot of the information that you need as far as foreshortening, perspective, general sizes and placements of things. But we now need to go back and draw over this in order to augment the anatomy, the expression, the pose, that sort of thing. How did this hit you? What would you be looking to expound on or to adjust when you go to the draw over?
Yeah, so working with a 3D model is completely fine. I just recommend to do hand-drawn sketches first and then get a 3D model as reference. Just because 3D models end up often being a bit stiff or also, how to say, opposite of liberating. The opposite of liberating. So it gives you some how to say constraints, and when drawing loosely with your pencil, you have much more liberty and can move more freely around. And that's just as a general thought. Try to do it first with pencil and then go into the 3D stuff. By now, I feel like the chains don't look like chains to me because of their movement and their behavior. They look more like snakes attacking him, looking at him. So I would definitely change that. Of course, there is no mimic because of the 3D model. But he looks, of course, right now relaxed or just not struggling enough. So he could open his mouth. He could be screaming and stuff like that. And also, I feel like the line of action is very, very stiff. We have everything turned over to the right side. It's like a C curve. Even the head. That makes him look like he's a little bit tipping over to one side. I don't know how to adjust that pose right now, but I think definitely something with the lower body, the legs could be done. The camera often in these 3D programs give you quite a lot of distortion too. You cannot often not get around it. Just if you're like really really working a lot with Blender and stuff and know about the different lenses you can use there and stuff like that. By now, his legs look super tiny because of that, and we have a very strong 3-point perspective going on here, and it depends on how well you can pull it off with the background. But you must really be aware of that you have a very strong lens in this one with a very strong three-point perspective and foreshortening, and it must be also visible in the background if you want to keep it like that.
Well, I figure like most men, he probably decides to skip leg day and focus on those biceps. But yeah, I'm with you. This can be excellent as a tool to get you part of the way using a 3D model like this. But you either want to have a drawn direction or be willing to break from this pretty quickly to get to something that's illustrative. You definitely want to do your value studies because it looks like you're using this as like a lighting idea. But that's not going to work once you put glowing blue chains in it, because this is all too bright for those chains to show up. Your direct light on this is a very intense bright light that's creating huge contrast. And what you want is more like this one down here, because all of this is sitting in the midtones. It's mid-lights to mid-darks for all of this stuff. And that's why the light chains show up really well. And that's the sort of thing you're probably going to be looking for in yours. Back up. So I did some drawing over of... Oh yeah, okay, because it pulled that out of the... Close. Hang on. It really bothers me when it's in the free floating note like that. I just need to reopen it so it adds it back in there. Okay, cool. So I did like a drawing back over the body here. And let's actually change this. So that shows up. No. So you can see some of the differences here where we've moved away from the 3D model. Like what you mentioned, it's getting the horns, pulling the horns out, making them bigger, making it more distinctive, pushing that expression so that you have that really forward brow. You've got either him really gritting his teeth or he's yelling with his mouth open. And then it's looking at things like the anatomy. Well, I know that if he's doing this with his arm, he's going to be contracting his bicep, and they've got some really big biceps. So instead of this, which is this little 3D model bicep, which does not understand how forms pull and contract with the muscles, and the same thing with the forearm, again, very narrow, we're going to come up here and beef the heck out of these things so that they're much stronger. We're beefing this up. He's pulling with his shoulders, so that's going to pull his shoulder up this way. We're looking at the size of his chest. They just have these ridiculous chests. So here it's all forwards, but I think we're actually going to have a lot more back there. So it's really getting that chest nice and big. Again, beefing up that forearm. Nice and big over here. We got to look at what his attire is. Again, we need to put some sort of attire, some chain length hanging off, some fabric, give him some arm guards, something. Then with the chains, we need to play with those so they're not so snake-like. I think this one in particular needs to be taken out. Because if you look at it, it literally follows the shape that's right there. And so it's too perfect. So we want to take that out and probably add in some other chains so that they are wrapping up around in more places. They're just starting to overwhelm him. And making sure the chains are nice and big, right? And we can have some of the chains passing closer to the camera so that we have a nice view of them. And it also makes use of that bottom left corner as well. You could even have some up here as well. I don't know why it keeps grabbing that instead of actually drawing. You could even have some up here as well, right? Making use of some of that space. Yep. I think if there's anything else. I might spread his legs apart a little bit more, get his feet more planted, like he's trying to get a better grip. And you may just have his feet being mostly overlapped by the upper part of his leg. And the digiguard, whatever, leg there. Is that hitting some of the points that you were thinking of, or would you push that even further in some different ways?
Yeah, so I really like the ideas you brought in here, and also the the facial expression and the bulky, much more bulky appearance of him, and the foreground elements. I think that adds a lot, and I hope it gives what's the name, Jonathan, a good direction for his piece. And you just saw with Clint, you can with scribbling, you can add so many ideas so quickly. I don't know, maybe you're super good in 3D and stuff, and you can do it with the same speed, but I think that drawing might help with being a bit faster than doing everything in 3D and getting ideas and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I don't know what his skill is, but this wouldn't take very long to do. I mean, I spent 2 minutes sketching this in, earlier. So it's not that difficult once you have just that sort of basic pose to build off of. But then you definitely need to think about what your lighting is and do some value studies and then do your color studies. And for right now, if this is fairly new to you, then just go find an existing Magic or D&D or Pathfinder illustration, one that has a basic lighting set up the way that you need, and follow it, which is going to be something that has, a magical spell going on or something that's glowing. You've got to have those glowing chains show up really well, and what kind of value scheme and lighting situation do you need for that? All right, that'll wrap it up for Jonathan's. I like the good angle. I think we got a pretty good pose if we can push it a little further with the strain and the muscles. Okay, up next we have Julian. Says, have not decided on color yet. Concerned about the flatness of the background, needs more depth. Unfortunately, can't make it to the stream today. Thanks and all the best. All right, so Julian's got in 3 different viewpoints here. We'll take a look at the concepts. One is the big wide scene in the library area up here. I think it's probably good we didn't go with that. It's just too far out. Can't really understand what's going on card size. The one that he decided to go with, and one where the book is opening. And that one's pretty good too. That one could work. And we did some lighting studies of light kind of from the front, from the back, underlit. Then a side view. And then a warm, a cool, and sort of a warm-cool split. Okay. All right, do you want to go first on this one? Do you want me to go?
I can if you want to. So I really liked actually the 3rd sketch that you submitted. I thought it's a different approach than what we saw so far from others with this theme. I like this book in the foreground being all aggressive, and he's like, "Whoa, back up!" So I just like the 3rd sketch in general a lot. I think the number 2 is good too. I just feel like maybe it's because of the rendering and lighting still, but from afar I could not tell that the book is biting his arm. It looks like part of armor or something around his lower forearm. So I changed some. Maybe it is again a silhouette thing. His arms are very close to his chest. It's all hidden in his silhouette. So the arms are hidden in the rest of his silhouette, and so it gets less readable from afar. So zoomed in, I'm all good, but it's a card that we are trying to draw. So I think we must make things quite clear in this one. It is all the same values all over the place. The background has the same dark as the foreground, as the midground where the characters and it's all the same color schemes, the character with the background. So we really must think more about how to make the guy more stand out and being more readable from afar. So were my very first ideas on this one. Did you have the same impressions on these?
Yeah, I did. It did take me a moment to recognize, like you, that that book was not part of a like an armor piece. And the issue with basically the same lighting values and colors being used on everything. I do think this scene is workable. I did a little change here. I'll turn it on in a second. I do think it's workable, but you also bring up a good point, which is like if we just do a silhouette of this character, you really don't know. Like you can probably recognize that as it's supposed to be a person, just because the shoulders head thing, but you have no idea what the arms are doing. So we probably want to play with the pose and see if we can get more of the expression and the attitude of the character coming through the body pose, where you're not reliant on just the facial expression. There's three primary ways that you can express with the character. One is through the body, one is through the hands, and one is through the face. With cards, most of it's actually done through the body, because by the time this thing's printed, for me, it's going to be like this big. And the facial expression is going to be pretty little on a card. So you can't rely on that to convey all the emotion. We need to do as much as we can with the rest, with the hands and with the body. So let's try to separate the arms out some from the body to change that silhouette. Other things that I was thinking of is with the character, I think the startled sort of expression is fine with the face. But like, if you're on the defense, instinctively, like the first thing that you do is you cover your face, you cover your head. And I think that's one of the reasons this is a really good reference image over here on the left, is that guy has his hands up in front of his face. That's what you do. And so if we can get one of those arms up there where you are protecting the guy's head, that's going to read better. Also, something else that you do, you curve over. You try to make yourself smaller. We actually have him doing the opposite. So he's surprised, but he's also defensive. That's not really the way that you respond. You don't surprise by expanding out and then also trying to protect yourself. No, when you protect yourself, you lower your silhouette. You get smaller. So we want to push that a bit by changing up the pose and getting him so that he's coming over, and we're going to try to pull the arms out in some way that they are trying to defend things off. And I just kind of followed that with this one because that was similar. But there's other ways that you can arrange the hands, or maybe he's actually got one of the books with his hand and he's trying to push it away. He could have, a dagger in one hand and he's trying to cut at one, that sort of thing. But that would help the general pose to read well. And you probably want to just go get in the mirror for a little bit. Just act it out in front of the mirror and see what kind of silhouette of the pose would read well, which way you can do it to keep the arms separated from the silhouette of the body. Then from there, let's take a look at just putting that background wall into shadow. I just use a darken layer at like 60% with like a dark blue. And if we just do that, then it allows all this midground and foreground elements to be the only things that are lit. And then that background wall drops down a bit. And overall, that's going to help a lot, especially if we actually add more light to the character. So like a linear dodge. If we do have some more direct light on the character, and he's going to show up even more because he's actually being lit. And perhaps you have some hitting like this chair or whatever. And some of these books that are in the midground, they can also be more well lit. All this stuff can be really warmed by whatever light is there. Then you can even have shadow right here on the closest stuff. So basically, you have a shadow foreground, a lit midground, and then a shadowed background. But all that background stuff is going to be a little bit lighter in value than the foreground, and so that's how I would think to take it. There is a lot of different ways that you would light it. Do you think that would be good, or how would you consider adjusting the lighting values to make things read a little bit?
Yeah, I like the idea of the very strong front light.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so people in chat say, "Wow, that's so much logic and so much knowledge," and yeah, that's basically what you should be doing. Like really thinking about what is happening there, maybe acting it out by
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Like I don't know, pull up a camera, have your girlfriend attack you with a book and record it, how you respond to that book, and how you try to cover your face or parts of your body or whatever, or run away, or just act it out if you can. And then you will realize a lot about the gestures that you're using. And you study this also a lot, right, Clint, with like gesture studies in general, or movie studies, or just drawing people from real life and looking at art and analyzing how other people did it. It's just, it comes with time when you
Mm-hmm.
study this a lot, and you just can't, when you start with art, you usually end up a lot with stiff poses, I feel like. Because that's what your brain is able to do right now. So it can make a full front, arms down and a standing straight character. But as soon as we want to have a different pose, your brain goes like, "What? I have never thought about that. Get me some references."
Some
So
people, it seems to occur to them very easily. I will go ahead and just tell you, it is not one of those things that is just natural for me. I really have to work on trying to get more in my poses. It's just not the sort of thing that just comes to me naturally. So if you're one of the people like me that kind of struggles with it, just hang in there. There's a lot of really good tutorials. Just look at go on something like Pinterest and look for improving posing. Art tutorials on improving posing. There's a lot of good little one-page ones. One of the best things that you can do, maybe you guys even done it. Anna, have you looked at like animators? I think animators have some really good advice on how to convey posing to get more of that action line throughout stuff.
yeah, there is this drawn from life books. I think I had some look at it, and actually at the moment I'm studying a lot of gesture, and it's also the new topic of the art club that I just came out with like
Mm, mm-hmm.
yesterday or 2 days ago. And I go through all the different types, like Force method, the Really method, Dimgula, Matisse, Hampton, all these people and how they approach gestures,
Mm-hmm.
and put a lot of stuff out there. So it's your chance to just grab some stuff and see how other people do gesture drawings, and it will add a lot to your art later on. And you will learn a lot about movement and so on. Animators are just very helpful because they are allowed even more exaggeration than people that are
Mm-hmm.
doing straight realism. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
you can push it much further. But if you know what they know and try to get it as much as possible, as it's still adding to your realism, you can get a lot out of it still. So it's also good to look at comic and animators, even if you're not striving for
Oh yeah.
being an artist.
Very true. Very true. I would recommend Julian. I would recommend getting rid of the swooshy white lines kind of around the books. Uh, it's just not going to come off very well. If you do want to add some sort of action liney things within the realm of what we have going on with this scene, I feel like you could probably make some sort of magic effect if you wanted to give them like some sort of magic glow, given the idea that they've been spelled by some way. And you can give a little magic glow around the books, and you could have a little fade off like that, and that would give the idea that there is some sort of arcane power, infusing them. And it would be better because it's going to give you a better pop of color and not just this sort of grayish white trail. And this one would actually serve to tell you a little more about what's happening and give you more color into that. So you could go that direction with it. All right, I think that's good for this one. A lot of the good things going on here, we didn't mention it, but I do want to mention, like, I think his design works well for this. I do like the satchel kind of flying up a little bit from his movement is good. The general design of the background, the door, the chair, the stuff on the desk, I think that's all going really well. The set dressing is excellent here. So we basically want to just focus on doing reposing and just playing with that lighting to get a better read for the small size.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's really, really, really solid base you got there.
Okay, up next we're looking at Martin Lopez. Alright, says, love your video about the attribute every artist has. Pick me up more than once. Well, you're welcome. Yeah, it's an older one. And I'm glad you found it helpful. First time doing this challenge. Well, welcome to the challenge. I'm noticing that just managing time has made the hardest. Yeah, that's one we always face. Everybody has that one. Going for number 2 in the lighting and for color as well. Might be biting into more than I can chew. I'll try to push through it. So let's go ahead and start by just pulling up at the concepts here. Everybody can get a closer look at that. You got one of a guy like running towards the camera. And then we've got one, I think we're looking upwards, and some books are coming off the shelf. Then we have one like all of them are pummeling him into the ground, it looks like. And then you play with a couple of different lighting setups here. Slash lighting coming across, to lighting straight down, lighting from the front. And then just some basically different tints of the color. This one is, I think it has a good idea. There is a good idea in here, but it's also one that doesn't work well for a card because all the main information gets too small from this vantage point. Is that something that caught you? I'm thinking we can use some of the same ideas, but we really have to pull the camera in closer because it's going to be so small on the card. What's your thought?
So I also thought the problem with the third sketch of him is that I personally would think that there are different ways to read it. To me, it looked first like just a bunch of books falling down from the shelf directly on the character, and people are like, "Oh no, what happened? Sorry, I'm coming and help you." You know?
Yeah.
That's my read. It doesn't look like these are really actively flying around attacking. That's why I like the first sketch most. We have dynamic range we have a lot of depth. We have a character really close to us, which is good for a card. So we see the face and the pose. It has a nice silhouette. You can see even from the simple sketch that he's running. There's some guy who got, like, I don't know, eaten by the books in the background. He's already lost. And it has a lot of storytelling. The way the eye moves around the picture is good. You go to the background, you come back through the shelves and the perspective lines back to the character. I think the first one would be my personal choice to go with. If you stick with the first one, I'd make it more clear that these books are not falling down in a straight line, but flying around and attacking those people, and probably not the guy running towards him, but running away from the books because they're super friendly. And the guy in the middle is completely covered by books. You barely see anything of him, and that's very hard to read for a card. These are my general ideas. I think all sketches, he has quite a good feeling for usage of space and composition and guiding the eye. I think he's doing that with all of these very well. Yeah, but number one would be my personal choice.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. It's like overall, there's some of the compositional dynamics that are working quite well. Because he's building multiple composition patterns into each other. Let's take a look at some of those if people aren't familiar with that. So you have your main character right here in the middle of his image. And then he has all of these books basically creating this sort of triangular pattern pointing into him. And then he has these radiating lines, these circles, and this target pattern going around him. And then he has all the pillars aimed down towards him as well. And then he has all the characters facing in to that character as well. So there's a lot of good things going on about reinforcing the focal point. However, again, if we're getting this down to print size, I could easily not even be able to notice the characters. So what I'm going to suggest is that you use the idea of basically being crushed by the books, but we zoom up. We want to be here. This basically tells us what we need to know about what's happening. I don't really need the other characters. I don't need to see all the other books. I just need to see him being affected by the books. So these are some things that I thought about, which is if you just have the scene and you could have like the guy on the floor and then he's just trying to escape, and basically you have 1,000 books coming down and piling on top of him. But we do want to show that they're open. Somehow they're animated, they're moving in a way that they're flying around. Because you brought up the good point that it looks more like a bookcase is simply falling over and all the books are falling out. Not that they're free flying. I think one of the reasons is because they're almost all closed. It's not like they're moving in an aggressive way. So something like that will tell us that information. It's all that information that we need and only that. Right? You could have just a little bit of a bookcase back here and back here if you want to show some books on some cases, and you can show some of the books coming off of the bookcase and flying their way over. Okay, that lets us know. And then over here, the idea is that the guy's being pinned up against a wall. All right, so you got the wall here. You've got some good perspective going on with it. And the guy's just being crushed against this, and you basically have all of the books rushing in here, and you want to have that one arm trying to protect his face, and you basically see that part of his head, and then probably just part of this hand out here because it's a good way to have some expression. And then everything else, just books. And you want to align the books in a way that they're all trying to crush in on him. And you could have this being a bookcase back here, and that would help to accent some of the perspective as well. So that's what I think of. It's where is the core of the action, and how can I just tell that as simply as possible? Between those, I mean, what's your sort of take on those? Either one be better, or do you think that is too far removed from what his initial idea was?
Yeah, I like the first one you did. It's very readable to me. But you must, of course, be aware of your values and lighting again in that
Mm-hmm.
one, because the books are very close to the character. So you might get trouble with the readability again. So maybe get also there some glows in it and so on, and
Mm-hmm.
being darker. Just keep that in consideration. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
if you
like the
have maybe like the foreground area right here being lit, it's like he's trying to crawl into the light. Everything
yeah.
else is being shadowed, so you're just getting some light on the edge of his face or bounce light up on his face. So he's kind of underlit by the bounce light. Then most of the books are in shadow, but you could have like the inside of the books where they're opened up like their mouths. You could have some like magic glow coming out. And that way you've got this nice pop of color on the insides coming out of some of these books. And that way you've got like dark tones with pops of the magic glow coming out. I think that can work really well.
Yeah. Very nice.
Okay. Yeah, so I never really like recomposing a scene and suggesting that. But I think in this case, it's going to be just ultimately a lot more successful. I know it is additional work, and I know that you put a lot of time into what you have right now, Martin. And I don't want to diminish that time, but I do recognize that there's a point at which, if the payoff is going to be enough in order to restart, I'm going to suggest doing a restart and going a different direction with it. In this case, I think it will be. I think you're going to be pleased with the amount of result that you get out of it for the effort. So I'm going to go ahead and suggest it. Okay. All right, Melanie is up next. Oh yes, yeah, I remember. Take a look. Okay. This is my second time joining. Well, welcome back to the second time. Writing an entire scene is quite challenging for me. This was a back and forth of simplifying and adding chaos again. I wanted to make it more dynamic, but I'm more used to calm motives. I think the image lacks rhythm and readability in some parts. I think that's a good assessment. I'm thinking about switching the lantern for a torch. It would simplify a lot and allow for some nice motion effects. Okay, so like the last one, let's pull up and take a look at some of the concepts first. What's your impression of the concepts? You want to break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah, so Melanie, oh my voice, I'm still a bit sick. Posted also her things on Discord, if I can recall right. And when she did that, I really like composition too, even though it looks more funny
Mm-hmm.
and more like for a children's book illustration. So that is a little bit the downside of it, because we are going for MTG like. So I think it was a good call to go for something different. Still, I think Composition 2 has a lot of potential. Maybe you can, as a side project, continue that one. It's just very, very cute. If you see it in Discord, Clint, and see a little bit more details, what she put in there, it's really hilarious.
Well, I'm going to just piggyback on that comment for a second. I'm pulling up some images here by Jesper Ejing, and we've looked at his images a lot before, but he does magic art, and he's got exaggerated, slightly comical expressions and poses and stuff. And I think that can work if you just pull it off right.
Okay.
So if she can push, and she likes that direction, I think you can definitely push it this way. And I would just recommend go take a look at some of Jesper's images. And like this, I mean, look how nice and exaggerated a lot of that is. And you could probably get something very similar out of that image. So, yeah, I was going to just pause there and say that.
Yeah, but it's a good call. So I just really liked the general feel of it and the line of action. is really clear in the body, and it just is a very readable and very clean sketch that she has there. The other one is very dynamic and cool too. It has also a lot of good points. I like how she trying to defend herself with the lantern. You tried a lot of depth in your painting with the character being foreshortened into the background, at least from the pose is what I read there, and some book in the foreground and so on. So you're trying a lot here, and I think that's pretty cool. I'm sorry if you hear the guys in the background. My family having a party. What I think is the most problematic in this one is actually the values and the usage of the lighting. Everything is super dark, and you really must go scroll in or zoom in a lot into this painting in order to see everything correctly. I didn't see the lantern because it again dissolves into the silhouette of the book because they're aligned completely, like the sides are aligning, and I think that's a problem. So maybe it would be better that the book maybe is already thrown away a bit from it, or positioned in a different angle or something, because it's really hard to read that. Yeah, the lighting is there's very strong light and a super black shadow, which is making muddy values, especially for skin. It's very tricky to get that then back to something that is more realistic looking. The foreshortening is I see that she tried it. I just feel like the upper body and the hat would have to be much more foreshortened than they are now. The legs are very tiny. It feels to me like the foreshortening goes from the face that is closest to us to the legs, but it's the pose is telling me otherwise, the other way around. You know what I mean? So the head and the shoulders are very wide and large, and the feet and the legs are very small compared to that.
Yeah, if we're getting that much foreshortening on the upper body, you would expect to see it continue with the lower body. It actually looks
the other way
quite a
around.
lot bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the value could do a lot for it, and some adjustments in the perspective of the character in general. These were my first things that I wrote down.
Yeah. From a glance, I can't make out a lot of what's going on. One, because of where things are positioned, the lantern directly into the book, and then just the dark against the dark tones. And generally, what you want for things to stand out is that their overall values are different than the things around them. And that's not what we really have right now. I know it can be done. You can make that value change. It wouldn't be a big deal. But with a book, the thing that came to my mind is from drawing comics the Marvel way, that old book. So you look up here, it's the same principle going on. That this is the wrong way to show a punch, which is actually showing the moment of contact between the fist and the face. There's nothing being moved. You can't see the amount of energy impacted. So what you want to do is actually show either the wind up or the follow through. You want to show the person being pushed by the punch and then the swing through, but not the moment of impact. So the same sort of thing here. You don't want to show the moment that the lantern hits. What you want to show is the arc of fire and sparks from the lantern and the trail of glass behind it, and then show the book tumbling off into space with fire coming off of it, so that you get a feeling of what just happened. Right? That's how you can do it. And you're going to get just an overall higher impact visual impact from it. And of course, the fire trail, that sort of thing, can always look nice as well. Get my thing out of my way. Other things is whether you need that or not. Again, I'm not sure you do. I would put a lot more books in here though, and I would probably get this foreground book and make it further into the image. Because right now, because I know that's a book, I can read it as a book, but I could easily read it as a chest or the top of a desk or something. So we probably want to open it up so that we can actually see those pages, and we can see the pages sort of unfurling. Then it's going to be a lot easier to visually read it as a book. You could have pages coming out like they're a tongue or something. Books also have those those fabric ribbons for bookmarkers, and you could have those coming out. One of those as if it was a tongue coming out of the book. But yeah, I would just kind of overwhelm her with some of these books coming in and make that a lot more of a thing, more of a threat. I think the stained glass is pretty cool. I like that idea. I don't know where she's going. It doesn't look like that's an exit. But I would push the lighting more so that she is going to be standing out from that background. And maybe she is all a bit lighter and warmer because of the torch or the lantern. And then everything else is a little colder. Yeah. So those are some of my thoughts. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, so definitely the background stained glass is such a good opportunity to bring in some very beautiful colored light in the background, like the escape where to go to. And also it could add more light on the character itself through the reflected light that will be in the room then. So of course, you must get some good contrast and also some darker shadows, and don't blur out everything too much. But also, I'd pay attention not to make everything black that is in shadow.
Yeah. I'm going to see just if I can add some quick atmosphere.
Yeah,
I
something like that.
That could really just fix the situation pretty quick.
Around the legs, especially, that you also have more of a silhouette of the character there. It's again dark against dark. You usually don't want that when you have a foreground, midground, background. And when these are overlapping, you want dark against bright, or the other way around, to make them stand out. We had, when we started the art club, a very nice exercise where we analyzed fore, mid, and background and the value ranges that had been used. And we found that, for example, if your character is in the foreground, so the foreground is the most important, you have the widest range of values also in that section in the foreground, for example. And the midground and background get less and less contrasty. You can also have it the other way around, like foreground being all just very dark, for example, because they're all in shadow and your character's in the midground, and then you have the largest range of values in that section, and then again brighter in the background, and so on. And if you analyze that for many different works of prose, or maybe magic cards for this one specifically, you get a lot of information on how to use the value.
Yeah, that's actually a good suggestion. Melanie, just go out to the Discord, and a lot of those posts are still out there. Just go back up there, take a look at what some of the other people already figured out, and look at some of the studies that they did. You can learn from those. You can do a couple of quick studies yourself, just to get an idea of how to handle some of those values. I did want to mention, like, if this character is swinging this lantern, It's going to be opening the chest up because she's turning around, which means that shoulder is going to be pulled out away from the body. And right now, the shoulder is really pulled up towards the neck. So this is going to be pulling out away. The joint is going to be more out here because it's going out that direction. So it's pulling, there's active force trying to pull the shoulder that direction. So you're going to get more of the arm coming out this way. Right. We just don't want to crowd that in because she's turning that direction. I'm also going to suggest trying to work on this. That's not reading as a book attacking her from a first glance. We may want that book actually just coming towards her to begin with. And maybe not have it quite to her yet so that we can actually read that silhouette a little better. Yeah. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on here. I'm still want to just go back to composition 2. If you do want to develop that and do it in a slightly exaggerated kind of comical way, that's still doable. And I would still accept it if you want to go that direction. All right, we're going to be taking a look at the last one, which is by Toby. Toby says it's the first challenge for him to jump into. Well, welcome to the challenge, Toby. I decided to participate in order to push myself to build a portfolio, hopefully one day become professional. I'm taking at the moment illustration process course, and participating in the challenge is a great way to practice. Cool. Imagine a white spelled Theros card. Okay. Planning to give him armor. That would be good. Don't forget about that. We want to give him some sort of armor or attire. Done a quick right-left lighting pass, and I'm waiting for your concept approval feedback. Okay, so let's pull up to the concepts and take a look at them and the value studies. You've got one that's more like just a bull. Probably not good. I do like the one that you're going with out of those 3. So good pose there. Value-wise, playing around with light back, shadowed foreground, side lit, and then like a dark background. Okay. This one's probably doing the best at making the chains have a glow to them. I don't know that we really need direct light on this guy. I'm tempted just to say put him all in shadow. Let that same shadow go over the rest of his body. You might have a little bit of fill light hitting his face more than the rest just so his face reads. But it's okay if he's kind of more in shadow, and we can have more than this in shadow as well. And you're probably looking to have some distinction between like foreground color of being warmer or cooler versus the background, and have like a warm cool dynamic with that, or a saturated desaturated thing with foreground background. But, all right, do you want to toss in some ideas? What was your general impressions here?
Yeah, so I usually don't see lighting situations that you show in your, what was it, Sweet 16?
Mm-hmm.
With the idea of a very concentrated light, for example, that is cut off by something. Like you could have, for example, what I could see here very well is when you just have some very hard edge light that is just going a little bit over his face and some part of his shoulder and arm, and the rest is in shadow, or it is very focused, that it's like just like with how to say that, well, it's not so spread so far, but more concentrated on a spot, a little bit more noir like lighting. I think people never try that, and I usually don't see that in the challenge, if I recall right. People just go for all in the upper body is lit, or all in the upper body is in shadow. the whole figure is in shadow, the whole figure is in light. So they don't try to play around more with these very interesting, specific kind of lightings that could push a piece or make it at least more interesting to look at. You know what I mean?
I
Maybe
do.
I was not, yeah, maybe I was not good in explaining it. Then there's so many ways to put a light on a character, and you should start playing around with that a little bit more and be more experimental and just go away from that. Oh, I know, light everything from the top right corner and everything gets hit by the light, everything. And I just do the forms, like there is shadow, but just on the other side of that. But mm, it's a bit boring, you know. You can leave this stage now. I see you're good enough already. You can go to something more and up the game in that direction.
Yeah,
So,
consider doing some sort of like given the idea that there is like consider like a slash of light coming across and just hitting part of that upper body so that this area is being lit, but the other area is not. So it's having a higher contrast of light and shadow there. And then everything down here is just getting shadowed. But even within this, we still have a lot of value that we can work with in order to push this further and some of this darker here. I think that something like that would be more dynamic to with the lighting, kind of following what you were talking about. Be more interesting. I did some play on the pose, and there was some of the things that I was thinking about adjusting. A lot of the general stuff going on with the pose seems fine. But no, I'll just turn these off. It'll show up better. Yeah. This is another one of those cases where the pose doesn't really remain consistent across the way that the body is moving. So you have the chest facing to the left, this way, 3/4 to the left. And then you have the head going 3/4 to the right. Now that's okay. I follow that. But the lower body doesn't follow it. What the lower body has is, again, this going that direction. Well, what you want to do is keep it consistent. So if it's going this direction at the top, and it's facing this way, and then the next section faces that way, and then you continue the curve so that the next section faces even further away, which means that you actually get at least a side view, if not part of the back. And so here you're going to be getting something more like this, which is the lower body is turned away from you the same way that the upper body is. Why? Because if I'm sitting here and I turn around, that's consistent. Lower body is mostly away, upper body is more towards you, and the head is even more. So each section continues that rotation. And here we have it inconsistent. You have the lower body facing one way and the head facing one way, but the middle of the body is facing a different way. It's just not natural. You don't move like that. So we want to make sure that that's consistent. And I think the lower body is probably the thing that needs to move in order to keep that consistent. Other thing is, like this one, kind of again talking about, limbs getting inside of the body silhouette. Similar going on here. We don't have anything of the upper body here, right? The upper arm there. It's behind the body. So if we can move it out and have that chest here, and then have part of that bicep, and then the upper arm, and then maybe we move the war axe, battle axe, whatever, out here, then we have a better read of the overall silhouette. Or, it can be going whatever direction you want with the axe. But we kind of need to move that out. Now, if you want it going down more, that's fine too. But we want to show like the bicep down here, and then the upper arm, and then the axe down there. But we just need to be able to see that so that it reads a little better. Again, we can probably beef up his arm here. We want to clear angle change to the upper and lower arm. We can build his traps up. They have stupidly massive traps. Watch that. You don't really have an angle change right there like that. You'd have the collarbone, but it's going to be going more like this. Then that's going to be going into basically the side view of lower body. Okay, that's some of my thoughts about posing adjustments. How do you feel about those, that direction with it?
Yeah, I really like what you changed there. I'm just thinking about the arms, how you sketch them in right now. They're pretty much a diagonal in the middle of the painting, like it follows the diagonal of the painting. Is that a good thing or okay thing to do, or did you just not consider it at this moment, or what do you think about that?
I'm not a big fan of this. That's one of the reasons I would have I would probably have this other arm actually coming up at a different angle to change that up a little bit. Or we need this arm. Like this chain feels is broken, but I don't feel like he just pulled it. I would expect to see this hand more like that, where it's curling this way, because from this pose, with the fingers going this direction, I feel like he just pulled it that way. And here with the hand facing downwards, he just moved the hand that way, which I don't feel like you make enough force pulling upwards to break the chain. So you could do a little change there, or have him like grabbing one of the chains and he's pulling some of the chains and he's grabbing them like that. That could work as well.
Also definitely have more chains being still connected, I'd say, because they're all loose right now, or basically nearly all loose. I thought in this piece he has a lot of chains, but they're all very thin.
Yes.
You can also consider about having fewer chains that are thicker than what you here. Just as a different version. Maybe you can try that too.
You know how Magic players are. They like those thick chains. So we just got to make sure they were in there.
Yeah, they can be like nearly as thick as an arm.
No, seriously. Triple the thickness of these chains. They're magical. They can be whatever size, we want. And we want to give the idea that these things are super heavy. Just the weight of the chains alone is probably enough to slow him down. And we want to show more of them tying him down. We see a lot of stuff wrapped around him, but he's busting out of most of them. We want to show maybe one of them broken, but we want to show multiple more chains. Like we got a chain wrapped around the end of the axe, but it doesn't go anywhere. So we don't want that. We want to show that he's being immobilized. That's the whole idea of the card, is that you're immobilizing one of the enemies. So, yeah, it's not just a fashion statement, right? If it was me, I'm probably just going for some sort of dusty background, sort of nondescript sky, in order to get that nice contrast on the character and the glow off those chains.
Yeah.
I don't think Toby's going to have much of a problem with these alterations. He obviously has a good idea of anatomy, general values, how to light things from different directions. So we're just trying to punch it up, get a little more attitude out of the pose, and getting those chains to read a little better. And this is also one of those things, when you get the card really little, the chains just become lines. And that's not what we want. We don't want them to read as ropes. We want them to read as chains, which means that if we can make the links in the chain a lot bigger, it's going to be very easy to tell what they are. Anything else before we wrap up on this one?
No, there were also no questions in the chat.
Okay.
I think we have it.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode then. Remember, guys, Discord, very active. Feel free to go out there. I think I have the link in the description. Otherwise, we could toss it in chat. I think I put it in the description, though. And next week will be the finals of the same challenge, but for Group 1. I was trying to think. Oh, yeah, you and I have a couple of things to talk about. Upcoming videos and stuff, but I will catch you after the stream on that. So, thanks for hanging out, guys. And until I see you next time, keep drawing.